Well, good evening, this is Handlock Steve, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and once again thank you so much for the donations that have come in. I really appreciate it. Thanks go out to Hugo, Custom Carbon, cheeky little beer, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Hamish, Harvey and John, it is much appreciated, thank you most kindly. And I'm sad to say that the video this evening is some pretty grim statistics, and the UN are now saying that 2 billion people worldwide will lose their jobs or move to part-time work in 2020. That's half the world's workforce. Okay, that is absolutely staggering figures. On top of that, over 60 million people will fall into extreme poverty this year. And if you can imagine the knock-on effects of 2 billion people, half the workforce basically in the world out of work, not spending, not participating in society, not participating in the economy. I just can't believe the knock-on effects of this down the road. I mean, it's just going to be staggering, and it's the way, you know, the protocols have been laid out for businesses to operate. You know, you can't operate the way they're suggesting, you know, having huge lineups, there's limited numbers of people in your business. How is the world going to function? We can't, government will not be able to function. You won't be able to fix roads or mend bridges in any kind of timely fashion because you'll be observing all of these ridiculous protocols which slow down the process. But I mean, the thing that amazes me, and that's what, you know, when I read this article, the thing that struck me the most was that the UN has done studies on this outbreak as the crisis is unfolding, and they're telling us as it's unfolding the ramifications down the track this year from what is happening, and yet they're not lifting a finger to stop it. You know, it's like they're reporting on cheese and cracker statistics from a Ritz factory, for goodness sake. I mean, you know, how cold-blooded can you be to actually watch a crisis unfold, spend the time to do a study, and then tell you that 2 billion people will be out of work, and over 60 million people will fall into a desperate state, and you sit there all smug that you've done a great study? Give your head a shake. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. You really couldn't make this stuff up. It is staggering to the extreme. And the other thing I was thinking about is that, you know, all of these people, you know, when you look at the studies that they do, you know, whether you like them or not, the vaccinations and so on and so forth, you know, they seem to know how to put stuff together. So, you know, they're not stupid people. And if they're not stupid people, then there is only one other explanation for all of this. And the studies and everything like that is that this is deliberate. This is known about, this was planned and deliberate. They have statisticians, they have logistics people, they know that the average citizen, especially working citizens, have about 3 months buffer. About 3 months buffer. And what are we coming up on? 3 months. We have been extended to June the 9th in Ontario here, and so they know that at that point, by the time we hit June 15th, just about every working person's resources will be absolutely tapped right out. And still you do nothing? And then you have the audacity to offer the bromide of we're trying to protect people? You're trying to protect us? The only thing that we need right now, that we the people need to be protected from, is our government. The damage, the willful and knowing damage that you are doing leaves every suicide, every business failure, every case of abuse, every woman that is struck, every child that is struck is on the heads of the Minister of Health and of the individual governments, provincial and federal, and every single person who works for them, because you can stop this. The stats are out. You know, we've all seen the stats. I'm going to post this chart. This is a week further on from the CDC, and it tells you the flu's over. It's done. We're finished for the year. This will go to bed for the summertime, and we won't be looking at it till November, December of this year, as we normally do. And it may come back. Maybe we'll get herd immunity in the meantime. Who knows? This is just a regular flu season. But the deliberate and wanton nature of the destruction of people's lives. How many people are you going to throw out on the street because of this? And I'm sure that you've seen companies dissolved, in this day and age. It goes into bankruptcy protection, and then it gets divided off, portions are sold, and then next thing you know, that entire company has gone in 15 different directions, and you can't put it back together again. So we can't undo the damage that has been done. Anyway, let's just pop over to this article and we'll read through it. It's quite a short article, and then we'll come back and I'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. And this from RT. Around 2 billion people may lose their jobs in the next couple of months due to the outbreak. More than half the world's workforce, nearly 2 billion people, risk losing their jobs or moving to part-time work in 2020 as a result of the economic fallout from the outbreak. That's according to a study by the Boston consulting group BCG, seen by RIA Novosti. It's hard to overestimate the radical changes in the global workforce due to the crisis caused by the outbreak, said the report, citing estimates by the International Labour Organization that global labour income losses will reach $3.4 trillion this year. In the next 2 to 3 months, 1 out of 6 people in the world will lose their jobs, with the unemployment rate to exceed 17%, said the authors of the research. Exceed 17%. The impact of the crisis on the labour market will vary greatly across industries, with those most directly affected by quarantine measures to be hit the hardest. According to BCG analysis, more than 80% of all the layoffs in the world are likely to occur in the non-food retail sector, manufacturing, hotel and restaurant business, tourism and construction. We expect that the world's unemployment rate will start returning to balance by the end of 2020. However, the outbreak has already launched a process of long-term structural changes, from flexible and remote work schemes to accelerated automation, and these changes will affect up to 1.5 billion jobs over the next decade. So that's interesting that, they figure the end of 2020. I don't think so. I don't know how you can have 2 billion people lose their jobs and everything returns to normal in 6 months. I mean, it's there's all kinds of questions about this study. I mean, I'm reading the figures here, and they're probably correct, but their time estimations, I think, are just way off. BCG estimates that by 2030, automation will put 12% of existing jobs at risk, and about 30% of jobs will require completely new skills. The study also indicated that more than 10% of the global workforce is highly likely to work remotely on a permanent basis, while for office workers, the figure could reach 30%. BCG said that in order to prevent the collapse of supply on the labour market, support measures should be provided by governments, from subsidising salaries and expanding social protection to financial and tax exemptions and temporary redistribution of employment. That's complete control over your employment network. They're talking about job sharing, they're talking about guaranteed basic income. You will be completely dependent on the government for a stipend, and that stipend will not cover all the bases. It will be basically food and lodging, and you'd be lucky if you can change your clothes twice a year. In addition, now is time to prepare for the after-outbreak future, introducing in the next 1 to 3 years a common strategy for professional skills in which retraining will be central, said BCG. And I found this article as well whilst I was reading the other one, also from RT, Global Human Development to Decline for the first time in 30 years due to the outbreak, warns UN. A report by the United Nations Development Programme says that the outbreak is unleashing a human development crisis, with declines in fundamental areas of living standards expected to be felt worldwide. a combined measure of the world's education, health and living standards, global human development is on a pace to fall this year for the first time since the concept was developed by the UNDP in 1990. According to the report, global per capita income is expected to fall 4% in 2020. Well, your income stopped going up, really, in 1980, 1990, somewhere in there. Wages have been stagnant, and it's going to drop 4%. While the World Bank has warned that the outbreak could push up to 60 million people into extreme poverty. The UNDP also cited the International Labour Organization's predictions that half of all working people could lose their jobs over the next few months, with the outbreak thought to cost the global economy as much as $10 trillion. Let that sink in, folks. $10 trillion. The World Food Programme said 265 million people will face crisis levels of hunger in the absence of direct action. So let's measure that against the potential health dangers from the outbreak. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million dead worldwide, and 265 million people will face crisis levels of hunger in the absence of direct action. That scale is really tipped to one side, isn't it? I think it's time to unlock the world and let people go back to work before all of this happens. You've done your study, let's get moving. And this from Bloomberg: job losses for 20.5 million Americans herald more pain to come. It took just 1 month for the labour market in the world's largest economy to capsize. It will take longer for the damage to be fully realised. In the harshest downturn for American workers in history, employers cut an unprecedented 20.5 million jobs in April, tripling the unemployment rate to 14.7%, the highest since the Great Depression era of the 1930s, and is only set to worsen in May as cuts spread further into white-collar work. It's devastating, said Ryan Sweet, head of the monetary policy research at Moody's Analytics. There's someone behind each of these numbers. It's going to take years to recover from this. There's a case to be made that a lot of these are temporary layoffs, so hopefully people can return to work quickly as we begin to reopen the economy. But there's no guarantee in that. And if you take a look at this chart here, it is absolutely staggering. Shattering the record books, the US economy lost 20.5 million jobs in April, wiping out a decade of growth. With a steep recession underway, the destruction of jobs heaps election year pressure on President Donald Trump to restart the economy and show results by November. But with little containment of a contagious outbreak that's killed 75,000 Americans and counting, business is returning unevenly and slowly, if at all. And signs are mounting, this is the important part of this sentence, signs are mounting that many employers will be forced to make the cuts permanent. So many of these jobs are not coming back. So I really don't know how this is going to work out. It looks like it's going to be a pretty grim ending to this story. At the very least, we are going to have a depression. And at worst, it will be just a depression that just goes on forever. And you'll see I'm going to put up some figures here. Even during the Great Depression, the unemployment figures were 24.9%. And we're approaching 17% right now, as they said in the study. But I bet you when you count in the underemployed and those who just given up looking for work, we are probably looking closer to 25%. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning, folks. And it's interesting to see that, in 1929, there was only 3% unemployment, very, very similar to today's figures. And it wasn't until we got to 1933 that we hit our highest, or the depth of the depression, and those figures went on pretty close, like 20%, 19%, 18% for the next 4 or 5 years. So we're looking between 5 years and a decade to climb out of this situation, and I think it's an absolute disgrace. I think that our leaders need to be put on trial. This is murder by proxy. The people who are going to die as a result of all of this, the missed operations, like I say, the starvation, the abuse, the loss of homes, people on the street going into wintertime at the end of this year. These people, if they survive this winter, they'll be lucky. And in a stroke of irony, you know, the province in Ontario here is putting some kind of rush program together to house the homeless. I mean, what kind of an irony is that? You know, this is like the whole idea of arresting people for not social distancing, and then letting, you know, felons, actual convicted people, out of prison during this crisis. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You know, you throw 2 billion people out of their homes and out of their jobs to protect people. I don't know. It's going to be on your heads. And I hope you can sleep at night. I hope your conscience pricks you every time you close your eyes, as you start thinking of the numbers of people that you will be directly responsible for harming in this country. And I hope you're satisfied with yourselves. I think you've done a terrible job, and you deserve to be removed, all of you. This is an absolute disgrace, and it's an affront to our intelligence, to our individual rights. You know, there are many people, myself included, who are fit, healthy and ready to work. And you know, you can give somebody a full body massage with or without a happy ending, but you can't give someone a haircut? Are you kidding me? Come on, what's going on here? You know, I'm just smelling BS just to high heaven. Nothing makes sense about this. Absolutely nothing makes sense about this. And when things don't make sense, there's something else going on. Something we're not being told about. And we need to know what that is in a hurry. And we need to go back to work in a hurry. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it was a little dark, but I think we really need to get our heads wrapped around the absolute craven injustice that's taking place here. And I'm not saying that people who've passed in this outbreak, you know, are a meaningless statistic. Of course not. Of course not. My mum was in hospital in England. I was worried sick. Of course I was worried sick. Who wouldn't be? She's my mum. I understand that. I get that. But when you look at the greater picture, I think that the damage that's going to be done, that will be wreaked on society, will be so devastating that the losses from the outbreak will pale in comparison. Anyway, as I say, if you'd like this video, please comment, subscribe below, and in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. See ya. Bye.